Boy, things just got really interesting in the whole Lamar Jackson situation. I told you guys like 8 months ago, I said, we're going to get to a point where this thing gets very spicy. Yeah. And I didn't know if we were going to end up where we're heading now, which is to a point of no return, but that's where we're heading. Now, the Ravens are still in control of this situation, believe it or not. We'll discuss that today, but things just got really interesting with the news that broke today. We'll talk about that and then some here on the 322nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 322nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Lamar Jackson dropped a bomb on us today. You've got the owners' meetings, league meetings, I should say, taking place right now. So a lot of people available to the media that normally aren't available to the media. You're hearing from GMs, you're hearing from coaches, things of that nature. So a lot of different news kind of hitting the cycle today. So we'll touch upon some things that I deem to be interesting, and we'll probably hear more as more of these interviews start to hit social media, little snippets of them and whatnot. But the biggest piece of news today was Lamar Jackson and him. And in these situations, I love when we get information from the source, because this time of the year, it's line season. I tell you that all the time. And thus, I don't really like taking information from non-direct sources. I need first-hand information, not second, not third-hand. I need first-hand information if I'm going to run with it. Well, Lamar Jackson said, I formally requested a trade from the Ravens on March the 2nd. This is news to us. The month of March is almost over. It's the 27th of March. We're just finding out about this right now. So he informed the Ravens prior to the start of free agency, hey, I'd like to be traded. I don't even want to be back here. You guys don't value me the way that I feel like you should. And so I want out. This whole Lamar Jackson thing started, which a lot of these situations do. This whole Lamar Jackson thing started strictly off of money, based off of money. And what essentially has taken place, and again, in a lot of these instances, this is what happens, is it morphed from a money issue into a respect issue. Because those two things are synonymous with one another, and they usually go hand in hand. If you respect me, if you value me, you'll pay me. If you don't show me the money, then you don't respect me. You don't value me the way that I feel like I should. Thus, I now have hard feelings. Okay. That's why you see players scrubbing their social media accounts of the team that they're with currently when they're in negotiations, because their feelings are hurt. Their feelings have been interjected into the situation. It now becomes a value of principle. You don't respect me. That's why you're not paying me. If you respected me, you'd show me the money. We're getting to that point now with Lamar Jackson, where he is almost to the point of no return, where there's no amount of money now. I don't even care if you give me what I'm looking for. I don't want to be back. I don't think we'll get there. And ultimately, if we're keeping it a buck with one another, which this is what we do here, the Ravens are still in control of the situation. They controlled this narrative when they slapped the non-exclusive franchise tag on it. It was really a smart move on their part. They didn't want to get here. They didn't want to be in this predicament. Can I say something before we really dive into this? Can I say something? I don't want to give the Cleveland Browns credit for this, because they're not smart enough to have done this. They did that. What they did was strictly to benefit them. It was not to impact other teams indirectly. But I must say, each of the last 2 seasons, we've seen divisional rivals make a power move for a player, or not each of the last 2 off seasons, last off season rather. We saw 2 divisional rivals make power plays for players and give them enormous contracts that ultimately set off a chain of reactions that should have benefited them and all the rest of the teams in their division. Now, the Raiders trading for Devontae Adams and then giving him the richest contract in NFL history of any wide receiver at that time was a hell of a move. But on the surface, it looked like, man, they just spent a whole bunch of money. They paired him with Derek Carr, his buddy. Good for them. Gave up a lot, but hey, it is what it is. Below the surface, however, when you dive a little bit deeper, it was that deal that ultimately pushed Tyreek Hill away from the Chiefs. And you're thinking, I don't think the Raiders are that damn smart. Like, they couldn't have known that knocking that domino down would produce that domino to fall. But getting Tyreek Hill the hell out of the division was pure genius, right? I don't think that was what you call an unintended consequence of that deal. It was an unintended consequence. They didn't mean for that to happen, but it did, and you're smiling from ear to ear. The Browns first of all, trading for why am I blanking on his damn name? Deshaun Watson. Trading for Deshaun Watson and then giving him essentially the richest fully guaranteed contract in NFL history is essentially what they did. Technically it's not, but it is. Okay. That indirectly influenced the way that Lamar Jackson feels. Without that deal, I think there's already a deal that struck with the Ravens, and he's a happy camper right now, playing under a contract that he's satisfied with, and we're not having this discussion. It was that deal that the Browns made with Deshaun Watson that made Lamar Jackson take a step back and reassess his situation and say, if he's getting that kind of money, I'm better than him. I'm a league MVP. I should be getting that kind of money as well. And because of that deal the Browns struck with Deshaun Watson, the Ravens could lose Lamar Jackson. It's a stroke of genius that I'm unwilling to give the Browns credit for because, again, it's an unintended consequence. But that's essentially what I feel like has happened here. Anyway, the Ravens are in a good spot because what they've effectively done by putting the non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson is they've put themselves in a position that they have the right of first refusal. And at the league meetings today, John Harbaugh spoke for the first time, this offseason on the Lamar Jackson situation. And he essentially said, we still fully expect Lamar Jackson to be back. Now, that's easy to say because where is he going to go? I mean, he's under contract. Essentially, he hasn't signed the franchise tag, but eventually if nobody comes and gets him, he's going to sign it and play for the Ravens for 1 year under that franchise tag. So he's not going anywhere as of right now. If someone were to sign him, and again, it's funny because we just assume that if someone puts an offer sheet in front of Lamar that is enticing and he signs it or agrees to it, we're just assuming he's gone. Like the Ravens can't match it. The reason the Ravens put this non-exclusive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson is to test the market, to see what Lamar Jackson will get back in terms of a deal, and they can then decide whether that's fair market value or, hey, that's a bit pricey for us. We'll just take the 2 first rounders. But they have that right. And maybe the Ravens are willing to pay whatever it is someone else is willing to pay. They just want to know what it is someone else is willing to pay so that they don't overspend, right? Like they may say to themselves, whatever somebody puts on the table, we're willing to match it. We just want to make sure that we're not going to pay a cent more. We don't want to be bidding against ourselves here. Because he thinks he's worth XYZ, we don't need to just automatically fork it over to him and give it to him. Someone else steps up and says, hey, we think he's worth that. Again, anything in life that has a value assigned to it is usually assigned a value because that is what someone is willing to pay. That is what someone is willing to pay. You can put a value on something and it can sit there and it could not be bought. And you may have to then reassess, is this price the value of this product or not? Like eBay is a great example of that. Because on eBay, you can put an item up there for whatever price you like. Doesn't mean someone's going to buy it, but it is available for that price. And as no one, shows any interest and your item collects dust on eBay's website, you start to ponder, should I drop the price of this or not? And maybe you drop it a bit, maybe you drop it a bit more, and then maybe it falls into someone's wheelhouse. There's the value. There's what someone's willing to pay. The Ravens have put themselves in a position where if they truly want Lamar Jackson back, no matter what he says, they can have him back. Because if someone puts a deal on the table that Lamar Jackson is happy with, that he agrees to, the Ravens can say, okay, you are okay with this deal. And remember, we had this conversation last week where I said, it's amazing how sometimes players get in their feelings and it becomes a respect and a principle thing. And you'd be willing to take less from a different organization than you would the one you were with because it's strictly based off principle at that point. Remember, we talked about guys betting on themselves and ended up taking deals that were lesser elsewhere instead of taking the deal that they originally had on the table. It could turn into one of those situations for Lamar Jackson, where if he allows his feelings to get involved, and I think Lamar's done a really good job thus far of keeping his feelings out of the mix. I think him requesting a trade is the first time that we've gotten an inkling that his feelings are truly involved, which that's human. It's human nature to allow your feelings to be interjected into a situation like this. You feel like I've given you everything that I've had since you drafted me back in 2018, made me a first round pick. I've sold out for you guys. I put my body on the line, and now I'm asking to be repaid for what I've done, but not only for what I've done. I'm 26 years old. I'm going into the prime of my career, for what I'm going to do for you in the future. And you're not willing to reciprocate that energy. So now feelings are starting to get involved. But I think what the Ravens have done is they've put themselves in a position to be able to say, hey, whatever it is, we'll pay it, but we just need to see what that number looks like. Since you think that number looks like something totally different, we just want to see what that number looks like, and we're going to pay it. Now, that may not be the case. They may have a number in mind, and if it exceeds that, they say, all right, we'll take the 2 first-round picks. But you couldn't get to that number if you put an exclusive tag on him where nobody else could negotiate with him. So when Harbaugh says we fully expect him to be back, that could be because they fully expect that whatever is put in front of Lamar, when it happens, because I still contend that it will happen, whenever that does take place, they're going to be willing to match it. And it's not like Lamar Jackson could say, nah, I think I'll just sign the one from Indy. I don't really want yours. No, if the Ravens match that, he has no choice but to sign it. So it'll be interesting. He could still then, after signing it, say, hey, I want to trade. I don't want to play for your organization. It could get sticky and messy and ugly and dirty and nasty, but I don't think it's going to get to that point. I just think he wants to be paid. That's what it all boils down to. So now that I've talked about that, I want to talk about the 3 teams that I really think are in the mix, in the discussion for Lamar Jackson. Now, I don't think, and I've made this abundantly clear, and I've got a video coming out. If you're a Washington fan, it should have been out already. YouTube just decided, no, bro, you're not putting the video out until I say so. So I'm still on ice with YouTube, waiting for them to essentially give me clearance to release the video. But it should have been out 2 hours ago. I've been waiting a very long time, as you can see. But Washington is one of the teams I feel like is in that discussion. The Washington Commanders, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Tennessee Titans are the 3 teams that I feel like are in the Lamar Jackson discussion. Now, if you want to throw the Jets in there, knock yourself out. There was something that came out today where the Jets pretty much said, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. We're trying to get this Aaron Rodgers thing done. Yeah, they've already went all in on Aaron Rodgers. They signed Allen Lazard to a 4-year, $44 million contract. You're not going to convince me otherwise that they were truly interested in Allen Lazard in that manner without Aaron Rodgers. They're going out, getting Allen Lazard, having discussions about bringing on Odell Beckham Jr. and potentially bringing in Randall Cobb. This all speaks to Aaron Rodgers, right? So they're not interested. I'm going to narrow it down to these 3 teams. Titans have been penny pinching. They've been lowballing their own guys. They haven't spent any money really in free agency. They did sign a couple of guys, but nothing earth shattering. They don't have a guy on the roster at quarterback that moved the needle. Sure, they've got a guy they drafted in the 3rd round last year that's young, has some talent, but boy, did he look bad last year or what? In Malik Willis. There's stuff there, whether they want to roll with Tannehill for another year, if they want to experiment with Malik Willis and see if that goes anywhere, whatever the case may be. The Titans are kind of stuck, and they need something to pull them out of quicksand. Lamar Jackson can do that for them. Okay. So I think the Titans are in this mix, and the way that they've been spending money and not spending money kind of leads me to believe that they're up to something. We'll see. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. They got a brand new GM. Maybe he's not interested in Lamar Jackson. Maybe he is. Then there's Washington. The Commanders are interesting. I talked about this on the show that I'm going to put out today, so I don't want to get too deep into it. It was supposed to already be out so I could talk freely about this, but since it's not out, I'll just say this. I've contended all along that Washington wouldn't be the team to put an offer sheet in front of Lamar Jackson. I still believe that to be the case. There are some things that I have thought to myself that didn't make a bunch of sense, or at least it made me pause and think to myself for a second, that's interesting. You'll have to watch the show that I put out today to figure out what it is I'm referring to. However, I don't think Washington is going to do anything. However, they're definitely in the mix. You have to assume that they're in the mix. And then and the reason that you have to assume that they're in the mix, and I'll just say this because I didn't say this on the Command Post episode that's going to be out here shortly, is that they're going to have new ownership. And there's nothing like swinging for the fences as a new owner. It's nothing like it. Coming in and making a big splash to announce yourself to your fan base that I'm here and this is what I'm going to do. Now, it can blow up in your face. That's what happened with Dan Snyder. He came in. He was willing to spend all this money. He got Deion Sanders, Bruce Smith, Mark Carrier, Jeff George, and it was a disaster, okay? But he was willing to spend. New ownership could come in, immediately say, hey, I want Lamar Jackson, make it happen. They make the deal, and that's his big splash, and then it could blow up in your face. And then you like, see what the hell you came in here and you did? But I think fans would be appreciative of a new owner coming in here and making a bold move like that. So you have to consider all of those things. And then there's the Indianapolis Colts. And I've talked about the Indianapolis Colts all off season long as a team in the draft in particular that I'm asking, what are you waiting on? You're sitting there at 4. Your existence in mediocrity these last 2 years in particular, since Phillip Rivers retired, has solely been based upon your lack of consistency from the quarterback position. I do not love your GM. I've called him a coward and all kinds of different names, but he has built a solid roster, has Chris Ballard. There's no mistaking that. It's a solid roster, not a great NFL roster, but it's a solid roster that can win in a very porous division consistently had they had better quarterback play. That said, it should have reached its apex in terms of frustration with the quarterback position last year, with everything that went on from firing Frank Reich to giving an opportunity to Sam Ehlinger to having Matt Ryan blow up in your face, and all of that stuff kind of just jumbled into one mix, and having Jeff Saturday be your interim head coach when there were viable candidates that were on the roster or on the staff already that should have gotten an opportunity. It was a disaster in Indy last year. It was a joke. It was a mess. That in itself should have been enough for them to say, enough's enough. Let's end all of this quarterback foolishness. Let's go get a guy. Reportedly, Jim Irsay loves Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. Reportedly loves him. And I truly believe they're going to hang back, wait to see if any, because if they really did, if Irsay truly loved him, why not go up to 1 and go get him? You must have strongly liked him. You couldn't have loved him, because if you loved him like you say you do, you would have went and got him. The number 1 pick was there. You said, no, I'm good. And maybe you picked up the phone. Maybe you made an offer. Maybe the Panthers' offer was better. They had DJ Moore. You don't have anything that looks remotely close to DJ Moore. Maybe that was the straw that broke the camel's back on your deal and what pushed the Panthers over the top to get the deal done. I don't know. I don't think Indy was super aggressive in going up to get number 1, if they were even interested at all. That said, I've contended all along that number 3 could become a hot spot in this year's draft after teams see what happens at 1 and 2. And really, it doesn't matter if it's Stroud or Young Stroud. After you see 1 and 2, I think 3 becomes interesting if you love one of the other 2 quarterbacks. But what happens? There was a little rumor. I don't believe it. It's Lion season. Believe half of what you see. And again, my thing with the Texans is this. Panthers and the Texans alike. You don't have to lie to us. You don't have to lie. Like the Panthers, you're at number 1. You don't have to send out smoke screens. You're not tricking anybody below you. You're at the top. Okay? You get to pop the top. You get to pop the top. Break the seal on the quarterback position. You don't have to fool anybody. Texans, you're second up. What you do is solely dependent upon what the Panthers do, unless they take a guy that you aren't interested in. Who they take is probably going to base what you do, honestly, in this draft. You don't have to fool anybody. Okay? You don't have to fool anybody, because the Panthers are going to do what they're going to do regardless of what you do. You're not impacting them at all. So who are you fooling? So when I hear reports about, quietly the Texans are having discussions with and about Will Levis, I'm like, what are we doing here? Don't drop the ball here. Do not fumble this bag. Don't do it. Okay? Don't do it. You've got a layup here. Don't kick it out to the three-point line and be greedy. You got somebody cutting to the basket, give them a nice bounce pass, get the easy deuce. Don't be greedy here. Mess around, try to hit a transition three when you got an easy layup and get nothing out of this possession. What if the Texans decided Will Levis's upside is greater than that of Bryce Young? Bigger guy, bigger arm, more athletic, and they fall in love with Levis and they take him. And all of a sudden, the Colts are sitting there like, oh my God, our guy is there. Guess what other teams who are sitting back are saying as well? Like the Raiders. We heard today that the Raiders are potentially interested in drafting a quarterback in the first round. Again, I'm assuming that they're interested in drafting Will Levis if he's there at 7. I don't know if they're interested in moving up. Remember, the Raiders did make a preliminary call to the Bears about number 1. They inquired. Don't know if they ever actually put a package together, but they inquired about what it was going to take to get up to number 1. Okay. What if they love Will Levis enough to go to 3 if it goes Stroud, Young, or Young, Stroud 1, 2? What does Indy do then? What if nobody was planning on trading up to number 3 because they assumed that it would go Stroud, Young, Young, Stroud, and then Levis is inserted into the equation because the Texans do something crazy, and now 3 becomes a hot spot. If you're Indy, you got to entertain trading up 1 spot to get your guy. But there are other teams that are going to be putting together a package saying, hey, don't go to 4. Come to 7. I got something for your ass. Come to 7. It could get interesting is what I'm saying. But I've said this all along. I think 3 could become a hot spot, and the Colts could get nothing at quarterback unless they're interested in Anthony Richardson, which I don't think is the case. But I could be wrong because their head coach is Shane Steichen. Who did he just finish turning into a prolific quarterback in this league? Jalen Hurts. If they feel really good about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, and he feels like both of their skill sets fit my offensive scheme, we don't need to do anything drastic. We'll be fine either way. They can just sit at 4. But what if it's one guy in particular that they really, truly want? And that guy's not available at 4, and they don't do anything to go get him. Or somebody jumps in front of them. Say the guy is Will Levis, and they just feel like he'll fall to us at 4. We don't need to do anything. And then somebody jumps in front of them at 3 and takes him, and now they're screwed. What happens then? I'll tell you what happens then. Then you go after Lamar Jackson after the draft. If I'm Indian, I've stated this already. If I'm giving you my first round picks for the next 2 drafts, I'm not giving you my pick this year when I know it's the 4th overall pick. You're not getting that from me. You can have next year's one and the year after that's one, because if I get Lamar Jackson, guess what? I fully expect for us to be a really good team. Thus, I'm anticipating that pick being in the mid to late 20s, hopefully the 30s. If something gets done with Lamar, I think it's going to be either midway through day 1 of the draft or going into day 2 of the draft. Because then I've already traded away my first round. I've already spent my first round pick. So I can make a deal. I can put a deal in front of Lamar now. I can negotiate now because I've already made my first round selection. You can't have it for this year. You can have it for next year. That's when I think things start to get really interesting. And a team like Indy, depending on what they do, if the Colts take a quarterback, they're out. If the Titans take Hendon Hooker in the 2nd round, they're out. But if the Titans don't come away with a quarterback, in the first or the second round. If the Colts don't come away with a quarterback in the first or the second round, and if you're a Colts fan at this point, I'm not interested in anything other than Lamar Jackson or a first round quarterback. When I sit there at number 4, you can't convince me that a different position is of more importance than quarterback. So you better be either getting Lamar Jackson or you better be taking a quarterback at 4. Nothing else will do. There's nothing you can say to me. There's no way you can convince me that you made the right decision if you take a different player or you trade back from number 4 and we don't have a quarterback. Gardner Minshew is not the answer. I assure you of that. So I think Indy is the interesting spot because of what Shane Steichen did with Jalen Hurts. And I'm thinking to myself, if he can do that with Jalen Hurts, what can he do with a guy like Lamar Jackson? That's how my brain works. And I told you, I was blown away by the creativity, the consistency, the diversity, and how they set things up in Philadelphia. It was a work of art. Chef's kiss. Shane Steichen was the architect of that offense. And that's why I want to see what the Eagles look like this year. Maybe I'm overrating his importance to the Eagles offense. Maybe I'm not. We'll find out. But if he's as good as he showed last year, if he was largely responsible for what we saw from the Eagles offensive attack, if he's as good as advertised, you give him Lamar Jackson, maybe even Anthony Richardson. I don't know. Maybe Hendon Hooker. Maybe they sell low. That's what the Colts have been doing for years. Sell low. Or, excuse me, buy low. Outside of, they haven't had to do this. They had to do it twice, and they thought they were good. They did it with Peyton Manning, and they did it again with Andrew Luck. They thought they were good. They weren't going to have to do this again for a very long time. Now they're unwilling to do it, it seems like. So I find it interesting that the Colts are just kind of sitting there. I am dying to know what's going through their brain right now. What do their Shane Steichen has already come out and said, we are evaluating every single player that is available. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we're interested in Lamar Jackson, but he didn't say we're not interested. He could have done what the Jets did, which is essentially say, nah, we good. We're not full. How many teams have come out and said, nah, we good on Lamar? Even when they didn't have to. The Patriots said, nah, we good on Lamar. Ain't nobody asked you. Who asked you about Lamar Jackson? I didn't ask you. Who asked you about Lamar Jackson? Like, oh, thanks, but we didn't ask you. I'm interested in Indy. They are one of the wild cards of the offseason. I think if there's a destination in mind for Lamar Jackson right now, as we sit here on March 27th, again, all of this is pending the draft. I don't think anything gets done prior to day 1 of the NFL draft because no one is looking to give up 2023 first round draft capital for Lamar Jackson. Just not going to do it. Not smart. Doesn't make any sense. Anything else would be uncivilized. The minute I spend my 2023 first round pick is the minute that if I'm interested in Lamar Jackson and I didn't get the quarterback of my choosing, that's when I put the offer sheet in front of him and see what he thinks. That's my take on it. Indy to me makes the most sense right now because of the staff that they have, because of what they've put together around him. They don't have the best talent in the world. Like, I wouldn't be excited to go to Indy if I'm Lamar Jackson, but that's been his thing, is he's taken lesser talent and elevated it at times. So you stick him in that environment, you add a piece or two, who's to say what the Indianapolis Colts could turn into? And again, that's a division that's there for the taking. Jacksonville won that division at what, 9 wins last year? 9-8? Like, that's a division that's there for the taking. So, we'll see. Was it 9-8 or did they win that at 8-9? I'm curious now. I think I've actually got that already on my computer. I just got to pull it up. Yeah. They won the division at 9-8. Thought it was 9-8. Didn't think they were a sub 500. The only sub 500 the playoff team was the Buccaneers last year. So I said all of that to say this. Lamar Jackson formally requesting a trade shows that he's starting to get to the point of no return with the Ravens. He's starting to turn this from a money issue into a respect issue. And then once you get to a respect thing, it turns into principle. And once we get to principle, there's no turning back. Once a guy turns a situation into principle, you will go and take less money from a different team to prove a point. It's principle now. I can't go back there. I'm pretty sure, and we talked about this last week, I'm pretty sure CJ Gardner-Johnson, okay, could have taken that same 1 year, $8 million deal, 9, whatever it was, 6.5 of it fully guaranteed that he got from the Lions. I'm pretty sure he could have taken a similar deal with the Philadelphia Eagles if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure of it. I can't confirm nor deny this, but I'm pretty sure if he would have taken that same offer, not knowing if the Eagles ever offered him a 1-year contract at all, but I'm pretty sure if he really wanted to go back to Philadelphia, after the Lions offered him that 1 year, $8 million deal or whatever it was, with 6.5 of it fully guaranteed, I'm pretty sure he could have taken that same offer back to Philadelphia, and Howie Roseman would say, I could do that. I can do that. We can try to work something out next year. I can do that this year, though. He didn't want it from Philadelphia because it became a principle thing. It started out as money. It turned into a lack of respect, and then it turned in off the strength of principle. I can't play for your organization this upcoming season. I got to go elsewhere. So we're not at that point yet with Lamar, but requesting a trade, that's where Austin Eckler is. Austin Eckler is at the respect point. When you request a trade, you feel disrespected, undervalued. He's not at the principal point where I can't play for your organization. I don't want to play for you anymore. You're not there yet. But when you request a trade, it's becoming a respect issue now. And the longer respect is drawn out, the closer you get to off of principle, I need to move on. I need to move on. Off the strength of principle, I need to move on. Lamar, I think, isn't there yet. And I think there's still a little bit of time, that needs to elapse before he gets to that point. But if no one comes and gets him, immediately post-draft, and we start getting to these OTAs and things of that nature, obviously he's not going to be in attendance for any of that stuff because he's not going to sign that franchise tag anytime soon. He won't sign that. If no one comes and gets him, if no one puts an offer sheet in front of him that's enticing enough for him to agree to terms with, and he's going to have to come to the realization that he's going to have to play for the Ravens in the 2023 season, he's not signing his franchise tag until probably after training camp. So I think the longer it draws out with nobody coming to rescue him, the more frustrated he gets. And the closer you get to off of the strength of principle, I don't want to be here. Kirk Cousins got to that point with Washington. Never demanded a trade, but once he was shunned and they spit in his face with the deal that they offered him $24 million guaranteed when he wanted 48. Once they spit in his face with $24 million fully guaranteed on a contract that he thought he deserved 48 million. Oh, he's like, oh, okay. I see what this is. Don't worry about it. I'll just hit free agency. He got to a principal situation where there's no way I'm coming back here. None. Zero. It's getting interesting. And I told you we would get here because I said Lamar Jackson is representing himself. This could get dicey, and there's no buffer. There's no agent to tell Lamar you're being unreasonable here. There's no one to tell Lamar, look, man, I understand that you want a fully guaranteed contract, and I'm here on behalf of you to advocate for whatever it is you feel like you're worth. But I'm here to tell you, based off of the circumstances of the last 3 seasons, not finishing the playoff game in 2020, not finishing the 2021 season when you guys were one of the best teams in football and then ended up missing the playoffs because you missed the final 7 games of the season, and not finishing the 2022 season and losing a playoff game that you probably would have won had you played. It's hard for me to take that into a discussion here, into a room where we're trying to have a negotiation and sell them on the fact that you are worth a fully guaranteed contract, essentially. There's no one there to reason with him or try to get him to see things rationally. He believes what he believes, and he feels like he's worth what he feels like he's worth, and either the Ravens can meet that or they don't. And clearly the Ravens are like, Lamar, you're being unreasonable, dude. And so they're miles apart right now. And Lamar released a statement essentially today where he talked about, he made a formal request for a trade, and he said, right now, they don't value me the way that I think I should be. And his quote essentially was, and I'm paraphrasing, is, I want to help a team. I'm going to read you. I think it's in here. Lamar's quote was, his dream is to help a team, close quote. Okay, he's just leaving it just as vague as you can leave it. My dream is to help a team. Essentially, whomever's willing to pay me, I want to help that team. We'll see what happens. The league they're hoping that this thing is resolved without Lamar getting a fully guaranteed deal because they don't want precedents being set. But we'll see. All it takes is one team, i.e. the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson. All it takes is one team to step up and offer Lamar, something that he thinks is worth him agreeing to. So anyway, I digress. All right. Let's get to social media maneuvers. That was supposed to be the gym dropping session. I just forgot to even introduce that. I just jumped straight into the Lamar Jackson conversation. Shame on me. Shame on me. I got to just do this one time just for the one time. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, LouieTeeNetwork. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. I hope I just did. But now we're moving on to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. So I'm taking all of your comments. Y'all know what time of the show it is. If you're out there, you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent and time permits. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, however, super chats are the way to go about that. Super chat, and we will discuss. Thus, let's get to the comment section, and we will start off with Trevor Patch. Thank you for the super chat, Trevor Patch. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, and thank you for your generosity. Greatly appreciate you, Trevor, who writes, Lou, Atlanta did us a solid last year by not allowing Ron and Marty to make a mistake with Drake London. Facts. Big facts. Here's to the Colts, Titans, Jets, or anyone else to save us from ourselves and setting this organization back a decade. Hashtag build through the draft. So that is an interesting take. One that I am intrigued by, and I am going to hit the button. I'm pressing the button right now on my Lamar Jackson video. So I want you to stick around here and watch the rest of the podcast. But if you have to leave and go check that video out, knock yourself out. It ain't going nowhere, though. So you can watch it after this is over with. But I know there are a lot of Washington fans that aren't watching the podcast right now that will consume that video as I speak. So I'm going to put it out for them to consume, and you guys can check it out, hopefully, when this is done. That said, that's the discussion that I would love to have with Washington fans. And there's debates to be made on both sides. I understand the debates on both sides. I get it from, each side of the argument. There are two ends of this spectrum, and I don't think you should be too far on either side. I know exactly how I feel. And I am okay with whatever the organization decides to do. I am not 100% against bringing in Lamar Jackson, and I'm not 100% sold on Sam Howell, and you can't go get Lamar Jackson. If they brought Lamar Jackson in, I would support the decision. If they decided not to, which I ultimately think that's what's going to happen, I would definitely support that as well. So I get it from the fan that's been, waiting for this team to stop miring in mediocrity for the last 3 decades, to the fan that's only been around for 8 years, that it's pretty similar. You haven't seen a big winner, whether you've been a fan for 30 years or 8 years, 40 years, you haven't really seen a big winner. You got to go back a pretty long time. 40 years, you've seen a big winner. But if you haven't been a fan of this team, 91, so we're in 2023, so 13, 03, 93, so you're talking 32 years, right? You got to be a fan of this team for the last 33, 34 years to have seen a big winner. I envision that there are going to be people on both sides of this discussion. So again, we'll see what happens. You clearly have planted your flag in the build through the draft, roll with Sam Howell. Let's see what he's got. Even if he's not good enough, let's go to the next draft pick and at the quarterback position and see what we can find there. And I got no problems with that train of thought. None whatsoever. And you're absolutely spot on 100% about the Falcons saving us from ourselves. I'm not a Drake London fan. He wasn't terrible last year. I'm good. I'm a pass. I'd much rather Jahan Dotson. So, and that netted us Sam Howell and Cole Turner and Brian Robinson. So, again, I'd much rather what they did instead of just taking Drake London. So, we'll see what happens. Got another super chat. This one is from Kyle. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Kyle writes, Vikes turned down Kirk's discount. Smart thoughts. Yeah, because how much has Kirk already milked you for? And how much of a discount was it really? But how much has Kirk already gotten you for? He's gotten you for X amount of millions of dollars. And what has it produced? One playoff victory? 2 years ago against the Saints? 3 years ago against the Saints? Like, at this point, losing to the Giants last year, and again, I don't think Kirk did anything wrong potentially in that game. Your defense is what let you down. Your defense wasn't good last year. We all know this. The defense wasn't good. However, You can't let Daniel Jones come in and have the best game of his career in Minnesota in the playoffs. Like, Kirk was plenty good enough for you to win that game, and the defense wasn't. That said, we judge quarterbacks on wins and losses, whether it's their fault or not. It's one of those things that really doesn't make 100% sense. It makes a lot of sense because the quarterback has the biggest influence on the outcome of a game. But in saying that, a quarterback can do everything humanly within their abilities to help you win, and the defense can and special teams can systematically erase all of that. We've seen it done before. So that's not Kirk, though. You know, you might be at a point now with Kirk where you're saying you're a really good quarterback and you can win. And I've stressed this enough. You can win with Derek Carr. You can win with Kirk Cousins. You can win with Dak Prescott. They're all in that same category. You can win and win big with those guys, but you have to have everything go right, and you've got to have a very good supporting cast around them. They're not necessarily going to elevate the play of other players. Maybe Minnesota's at the point where they're tired of having a guy that doesn't elevate the play of others. Maybe they're like, hey, show us something this year, or we'll show you the door next year. Maybe that's where they're at. And again, I can't stress this enough. You don't want to be in the quarterback wilderness. It's dark, it's cold, and it's not safe. And allowing Kirk that opportunity to be free next year could be dangerous, and it could backfire. But you're probably at the point now where you're saying, hey, we've invested enough in you. We've given you weapons. You know, you got the best receiver in all of football. You know, you got a really good running back. Could have probably put a better offensive line in front of you, but we've tried. It's not for a lack of trying. And, you know, we drafted Irv Smith. He never materialized into what we thought he was going to. But still, we've tried to put weapons around you. We've given you opportunities, and you've fallen short in some areas. Not you specifically every single time, but we're kind of at a crossroads with you. And it's not that dissimilar from, you know, where the Tennessee Titans are with Ryan Tannehill. You get stuck after a while. You get stuck. And, you know, in the NBA, there's this thing that happens to teams where you plateau, and then you have to do something. And it has to be drastic. And it may not work, and it may blow up in your face, but if you don't do something drastic, you will never win in the NBA. Case in point, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They traded 4 first-round picks and players. Some good ones, too, at that. Malik Beasley. I always forget my man's name. Jared Vanderbilt. These were core players on that team that went to the playoffs last year. And you did all of this in the name of getting Rudy Gobert to pair him with Cat to form this Twin Towers type of thing in hopes that he would shore up your back end, because your biggest issue last year was, hey, we were the #1 3-point shooting team. We could score with anybody. We just couldn't stop anybody. Cat's not a real center. He likes to play on the perimeter. He's not deterring anybody at the rim. We need a rim protector. So you go get Rudy Gobert. But in doing that, you got rid of what made you the best 3-point shooting team, because Malik Beasley was one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. You kind of blew up what you were building. You got rid of a guy that I thought was a huge part of why you were winning. Yeah, it doesn't score a lot of points, but he was defensively and intensity-wise a huge piece of what you were doing. You get rid of him, and it's not the same team. Is Rudy Gobert worth 4 number ones? Hell no. But the Timberwolves felt like they were stuck. The Phoenix Suns, KD is aging, and my buddy's a Phoenix Suns fan, and I say, bro, if he's healthy, you're a title contender, but you gave away, and they had no choice. You gave away so much stuff that if anything happens to Book or to Kevin Durant, you're screwed. You don't have enough. There's no more Mikal Bridges to give you a boost if one of those guys has an off night or they're banged up. There's no more Cam Johnson to shoot the lights out from 3. You gave up what you had to give up, but you're screwed now if everything isn't perfect. But they were stuck. The minute they re-signed DeAndre Ayton, they were stuck. Couldn't let him leave. Don't want to let a big with his potential and his talent leave. But you know what DeAndre Ayton is. He's an enigma. But they had to do what they had to do. Now they were stuck, so they had to go get KD. They had to do something drastic. Maybe the Minnesota Vikings are at a point now where they feel like they're stuck, and maybe they have to do something drastic. And if Kirk doesn't prove something to them this year, we have to go in a different direction. We don't know. It's not like Kellen Mond, who they drafted, a couple of years ago or whatever in the 3rd round. It isn't like he's any good. It's not like they got a guy on the roster that they like. They're going to have to do something drastic, whether it's go out here in the market, find one of these veteran quarterbacks looking for a new home that we seem to have every year, or you're going to have to find something via the draft. But I don't think they were looking to hitch their wagon to Kirk Cousins. So anyway, I digress. Envision Home DEG. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for your generosity. I can't thank you enough. I am going to read your super chat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me put that up there one more time. Really appreciate you, man. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, is Louie T excellent or what? This dude has celebrated a decade plus of educating many like me who thought they understood football. Lou, this is a long time coming, kind sir, due to my lack of tech. My guy MP, man. Me and MP go back a long time. He might be the longest subscriber that is in constant communication with this channel. He goes back to the in the lab room days. Every bit of 2012, if not 12, definitely 13 for sure. I appreciate you, MP, as always. Envision Home DEG. Thank you so much, my guy MP, man. Shout out to my guy MP. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. Any hashtags out there? I want to read something real quick before we get to some of these hashtags. I want to read a tweet that I saw earlier today. Let's see. This tweet right here is from at Brian Cause. So I'm assuming he's a beat writer that covers the Jets, is my guess. Joe Douglas, who is the GM of the New York Jets, said, again, you're going to hear a lot of bits and pieces coming up from different organizations. Robert Kraft spoke today, actually said that he feels like Jared Mayo, who is currently on the Patriots staff, and remember, he's been interviewed for head coaching jobs. He's a guy that seems to be in high demand around league circles. Kraft says, I see no ceiling for this guy's talent, and he easily is in the running to be the heir apparent of the Bill Belichick throne in New England. So you're going to hear little bits and pieces like that coming out from different organizations. But this particular piece of information that I'm about to read to you guys is from Brian Cause, who wrote this. Joe Douglas said there have been productive conversations with the Packers, but they're not where they need to be. He said there is no sense of urgency right now. What have I told you guys? Deadlines spur action. I told you, I said last time I checked with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets have no reason to give in to the demands of the Packers right now. And the Packers, same thing. There isn't a football game being played next week, next month, the month after that, or the month after that. Okay. As far as those two teams are concerned, they're going to play this game of chicken because the Jets right now have exhausted all of their options. They allowed everyone else to essentially find a seat in this game of musical chairs. Now, Lamar Jackson is the wild card, and they right now have said, we're not interested in Lamar Jackson, but they could go back later on down the road and say, you know what? Y'all want to play hardball? I can just put an offer sheet in front of Lamar Jackson and we can get this party started. What y'all trying to do? And the Packers could call their bluff and say, go ahead, give up 2 first-round picks. Pay him a fully guaranteed contract. We're asking you for a 1 and you don't even want to come off of that. Go ahead and give up 2 for Lamar Jackson. Be my guest. We'll hold on to Aaron, knowing that they don't want to. But guess what? Because nothing is imminent, the Jets don't have to move and the Packers don't have to move. Eventually, somebody's going to blink. And the Jets are saying, it won't be us because you don't want Aaron Rodgers breathing on the neck of Jordan Love. Rodgers can't be on your roster if you're planning on starting Jordan Love. He can't be. Either you're going to have to force him into retirement or you're going to have to do something with him. You're not going to release him because you could get something for him. So something has to be done. And the Jets know that. And just as Joe Douglas just said, there's no sense of urgency. Again, I'm going to keep dropping these gems on your melon, man. Stay with me. I got you. All right. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section and see if there are any hashtags here that need to be consumed. HHC Lunar says, remember, just because some ask for a trade doesn't mean it will happen. Same thing with Austin Eckler. You can ask for a trade as a 27-year-old about to turn 28-year-old running back. You can ask for somebody to come rescue you, give up draft capital, and give you new money. But the likelihood is in a deep running back draft class with cheap labor coming into the league, young cheap labor, hey, we respect what you've done, Austin, and you still got good football ahead of you. But I ain't trying to give up no draft picks and pay you, bro. That's a lot for a 28-year-old running back. That's pretty steep. So you can ask for a trade. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. And there's nothing wrong with asking for a trade. But, you know, we'll see what happens. HHC Lunar writes, Lou, don't forget the Ravens already have a Pro Bowl quarterback on the roster already. LOL. Look, man. The fact that man made it to the Pro Bowl last year shows you how much of a joke the Pro Bowl is. Like, are you kidding me? The hell was he doing on the Pro Bowl roster last year? When I saw, there's no amount of alternates that should have landed him on the practice squad or practice squad on the Pro Bowl roster. No amount. They could have been on their 10th AFC quarterback alternate, and he still shouldn't have been selected. How him and Derek Carr didn't even finish the season as the Raiders quarterback, not due to injury, but because they told him to go home. We don't want you getting hurt because we don't want to be tied to you and owe you any money because of an injury guarantee. Take your ass home. How does he end up in the Pro Bowl? Mind totally blown. I don't. The Pro Bowl is a joke at this. Just announce guys made it to the Pro Bowl, and just leave it at that. Like, you don't even have to do anything anymore. If you want to give them a trip, give them a trip. That's funny, HHC Lunar. Technically, yes, they do have a Pro Bowl quarterback other than Lamar Jackson on the roster, technically speaking. J-Rod writes, I got a feeling the Washington team might land Lamar, especially if the team gets sold. That's, to me, when things get interesting. You know, that's when things can get really, really interesting. You get a new owner in there, and that new owner is looking to make a big splash. There's no bigger splash that you can make than the quarterback position and going out and getting Lamar Jackson. I would assume, and this is my guess, if you're a real businessman, your first move isn't to come in and be knee-jerk and want to make a big splash. Okay. Good businessmen come in and want to assess the law of the land first, the lay of the land. All right, what's going on here? Talk to me. I want to see what's going on. I want to feel out the process before I do anything rash. You don't want to come in, start rocking the boat, messing with things you don't even know how it's going to affect other entities in other parts of your business. You just want to see how everything works, what can change, what should change, and then you start to dive in and make changes as you assess the situation and realize, all right, this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change. It's hard for me to buy an owner coming in here and just saying, go get Lamar Jackson. Now, not saying that it can't happen. You spend $6 billion for an NFL franchise. You want to win and win fast and win big and win quickly. But there are ways to go about that. So we'll see. We'll see. Watt Holmes writes, I don't think everyone sees how much this situation benefits Washington. Other side of Maryland, Lamar will play this one season on the tag. If Sam is not it, we just trade for 8, our 24 and 25 first. I mean, theoretically, yeah. If no one comes and gets Lamar and he's playing under this tag, because the Ravens aren't going to let him walk for nothing. So if he plays under the tag this year and they can't find a way to compromise and find a deal that makes sense for both sides, or Lamar gets to that principal point that I just talked about and he won't sign a long-term deal, they're going to trade him to somebody. There is no way that they allow Lamar to get to that third year and that third franchise tag and have to let him walk like Washington did with Kirk Cousins. They're going to get something for him. So if it turns into, them trading him next offseason, it may benefit Washington if Sam Howell doesn't, my thing is like, I don't want to be so quick, like, because the assumption is if Sam Howell's not good next year, then you just got to move on from him. What if Sam is solid next year or this upcoming season? What if he's solid, but you feel like there's so much more that you can get out of him? First year in an offense, Bieniemy just kind of getting comfortable as a play caller. Maybe there was an injury here or there to a big time player or two. And maybe you say there's so much more we can tap into there with Sam, but we saw enough to want to go forward with him another season. I don't know if fans will be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because of the draft, status. That's the thing that really frustrates me with Sam is when you get labeled as a 5th round pick, you're not going to get a ton of opportunities like a first rounder would. We wouldn't be having this conversation if Sam Howell was, a first round pick. If Washington traded back into the back end of the first round and took Sam Howell at 32, we wouldn't be having a discussion about moving on from him after 1 year as the starter. But that could be where we are if, he doesn't light it up next year. That sucks to me. That sucks. But we'll see what happens. Let's see. The Code Talker writes, Lamar Jackson acquisition. Who are we releasing? Whose contract are we restructuring? I mean, there's so many things you can do. That first year of the contract basically can be where, like, look at the now again, you're going to pay for this. You know, nothing's free and nothing's cheap. But look at what the Browns did to the first year of Deshaun Watson's contract because they knew he was going to be suspended, right? They made his base salary counting against the cap like 1 point some odd million dollars or something like that. It was really, really minuscule because they wanted to put as much money in his pocket as possible because they knew he was going to be suspended. He was going to lose game checks. So they made it so that he was losing pennies on the dollar. So they gave him a bunch of upfront money and guarantees, and they pushed a lot of his guaranteed money in base salary back in the deal. And that first year, he was making nothing, and it counted really nothing against the cap. You could do that with Lamar Jackson. And there's still people's deals that you can restructure, push back money if you need to. There's still Chase Roulier. There's a couple of guys that you can go to and say, hey, either you restructure or we're going to release you, like we did last year with Carson. You may not want to do that, but if they wanted to do that, they could. I already told you, I don't think they're going to. I've said this before. I'll say it again till my face turns blue. I don't think they're going to do it. But it is a conversation. It is a conversation. Let's see. Watt Holmes writes, and while everyone is going crazy this year for Washington quarterback, Washington will sit and wait for Caleb Williams like a lion in the bushes. Ha, 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 ha. Perfect scenario. It's really not, though, a perfect scenario because ultimately what you're saying is Washington's going to end up with the worst record in football, or they're going to trade up to the number one pick. And that is assuming, which you shouldn't do, that the number one overall pick in the league doesn't belong to a team that needs a quarterback. The likelihood, more so than it is like this year where the Bears, who already have a young quarterback, or last year where Jacksonville already had a young quarterback and had number one overall pick, the likelihood is less that one of those teams that already took a young quarterback will sit at number one. The more likely scenario is that a team that absolutely sucks ass, who needs a quarterback, is going to be at number one. Because that's why you usually suck. The only reason Jacksonville ended up with the number one overall pick is because they had Urban Meyer as a head coach, and that was an abject disaster. Anybody else is their head coach, they aren't the number one overall pick more likely than not. He was a train wreck. And the proof is there with them getting, Doug Peterson and them making the playoffs and winning the division in year one of Doug Peterson. They would not have had the number one pick. The Bears they literally set themselves up for failure. This past year, they drafted Justin Fields into a situation that was no win for anybody involved. You had a lame duck head coach, and Matt Nagy. You had a lame duck GM and Ryan Pace, and they went out and drafted a quarterback that they needed time on. They didn't have any talent around him, and they knew they were going to have to take lumps with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields, and they did, and they got fired. Now Fields has to learn another offense. And they didn't win. And we said this last offseason. What are you doing? Are you setting Justin Fields up for failure or what? Because even if you don't believe in him, you still need talent. Whomever's playing quarterback, you still need stuff. You can't go out and get Pringle and all of these guys that they went out and got last year in free agency and say, hey, Justin, we got you some stuff, man. Go out and make it happen. That shit was a joke. Except Justin wasn't laughing. Then he said, all right, I'll just pull out my do-it-yourself kit. And while that was cool, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Then they realized we should probably help Justin. That wasn't fair. That's how they got to number one. But that doesn't happen often. You draft a guy, you're going to try to give him every resource you can to make him successful. So the likelihood that the team that ends up with the number one, overall pick is going to be a team that needs a quarterback. And I can't state this enough. Ron Rivera has never had less than 5 wins in his career, even including the year he got fired in Carolina. He was 5-9 when he was fired. And if Cam Newton doesn't get injured, he's not 5-9. He was 5-9 with Kyle Allen going on a heater that year, if you recall, where people were actually debating, should the Panthers move on from Cam Newton because Kyle Allen is the guy. Ron isn't going to rock bottom. Our roster won't allow us to rock bottom. I'm not saying that you can't end up with number one via a trade, because the number one overall pick in the draft belongs to a team who had a couple of injuries, one most notably to the quarterback position. They didn't expect to be there, and they end up there. I'll give you a good example. Cincinnati. If anything happens to Joe Burrow, they're screwed. Period. End of discussion. I don't know if the rest of the team is good enough to overcome, their situation. If anything happens to him, they're screwed. If anything happens to Justin Herbert with the Chargers, they're screwed. Done. Finito. Finished. He's so much of what they do. Chargers would be interested in trading out of number one. Bengals would be interested in trading out of number one. They didn't expect to be there. But the likelihood is somebody astastic, let's say the Raiders ultimately don't do anything of note at quarterback. Don't draft anybody in the first round. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt 4 games into the season. They've got a situation where they can end up sucking ass. The Arizona Cardinals look like the favorite for me as of right now, with no Kyler Murray for the first half of the season, bare minimum, and them trading away every single asset that is of any tangible worth, including DeAndre Hopkins going to be traded here shortly. They look like they're punting on 2023 and positioning themselves to have a high draft pick next year. Are they going to move on from Kyler Murray? Probably not. Probably not. Which means they would be open for business. But aside from Arizona, it's probably going to be a team that needs a quarterback. And to think that Washington's going to be bad enough on their own merit, because again, Jacoby Brissett ensures that no matter what, you're not going to be bad enough to get the number one overall pick. So I don't buy that. Dejon Bell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Dejon Bell writes, man, at the end of the day, if we go get Lamar, we go into the Super Bowl. What EB say? Comfort is the enemy of progress. Good one. Good one. I can't confirm or deny. I can't co-sign that getting Lamar Jackson ensures you of anything, because the man has been excellent in the regular season, and the postseason has been his kryptonite. Okay. For as many times as he's been, he's only won once. So I can't say that you're going to the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, but what I can confirm is that Eric Bieniemy did say that comfort is the enemy of progress. He did say that. And I don't think Washington's comfortable. They've done what they're doing is they're doing the opposite of what they've done. If they were if comfort were what they were in the interest of, they would have stuck with Heineke. Right? That would have been the comfortable thing to do. Roll with Taylor Heineke, bring in someone to compete with him and go into the offseason in that way. That's not what they did. Sam Howell is a change up for us. We've done the quarterback market each of the last 2 years. We've done that. And now we're going to give a young quarterback on the roster an opportunity. This goes back to Ron's first year when he gave Dwayne Haskins an opportunity as a young quarterback on the roster. We're going back to that. So we'll see what happens. That's funny, though. Comfort is... Oh, my God. You guys are hilarious. Anyway, I digress. That's going to take us to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So, I find so many interesting things developing in the league right now. Hold on a second. So I see a couple of things from today's league meetings. Andy Reid shaded Jordan Love. So he was asked about Jordan Love, and Andy Reid drew a blank. Like, who? Ooh, ouch. It's been a while, though. But remember, Jordan Love played against the Chiefs, 2 years ago? Like, he should at least remember that. Andy's like, who? Jordan who? Damn. All right. Zeke may return to the Cowboys. I don't see that happening. All he did was he didn't slam the door shut. Mike McCarthy pretty much said, I think you always keep that door open. What he's essentially saying is he ain't coming back this year, but who's to say he doesn't sign a one-day contract to retire Cowboy 3 years from now? He's not coming back to the Cowboys this year, though. And then Commanders not pursuing Lamar. Washington GM confirms today that they are sticking with Jacoby Brissett and Sam Howell at quarterback. What are they supposed to say? I believe them, by the way. I've already told you guys this, a bunch of times. I'm on record as continuing to repeat over and over again. I don't think we're that team. But what else is he supposed to say? I mean, he could say what the Colts said today, which is we are evaluating every position and all players that are available. He could say that, right? But what is he supposed to say? I believe them, though. I don't think they're pursuing Lamar Jackson. And with the moves that they've made, it suggests that they're not going to go in that direction. I would just say that. Jacoby Brissett, for me, was the final piece to say we're not pursuing Lamar Jackson, because you don't need to pay your third string quarterback, because if you trade for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens aren't interested in Sam Howell being tossed into the deal, right, which we know what you would have to give for Lamar. You don't have to toss a player in. It's just 2 first-round picks. So essentially, if you're trading, or you're rather signing Lamar to an offer sheet, giving up the 2 first-round picks, you're bringing in a third quarterback. Your third quarterback on the roster, which would be Jacoby Brissett, would in effect be making, $8 million? With a chance for it to be, 10, 11, 12, whatever it could kick up to with incentives. Whose third string quarterback is doing that in the league? I mean, and you could easily say, well, Sam Howell goes to 3. Where's the beneficial part of that? Where's the psychological sense in moving Sam Howell from potentially number 1 to number 3? What kind of sense does that make? It doesn't make any, if you ask me. So, and as I mentioned, you're going to hear a lot coming from these meetings that are being had. I mean, I talked about this. I referenced this earlier. Raiders may draft a quarterback in the first round. Josh McDaniel gives glimpse into Vegas's draft strategy at today's NFL annual league meeting. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. If I'm really looking to draft a quarterback, am I going to tell you that? unless I have a definitive plan in place. Now, if you're saying I'm going to add a quarterback at some point in the draft, doesn't mean it's going to be in the first or the second round. It could be in the third or fourth round. Okay. But if I'm telling you I'm interested in potentially adding a first round quarterback, why would I tell you that? And I'm sitting there at 7. Why would I tell you that? I don't know. Just a little food for thought. At the end of the day, you guys do the dishes. We'll see what happens. The Lamar Jackson situation is interesting. I find how the league has addressed free agency this year to be very interesting. I do think there's a thing called collusion that does exist within NFL circles. We've seen them collude before, going all the way back to 2011 when they told, the uncapped year where they told teams do not dump cap in this uncapped season or else you will be penalized. And technically there shouldn't have been a penalty for that, but they had already behind closed doors colluded with one another to say, hey, don't dump cap or else ... So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, got a comment here on the way out. It's from Red Wing 01, who writes, I know you've alluded to this, but how confident in you are you in Sam compared to Dwayne, especially year 2 of each? I'm way more confident in Sam. I remember I didn't like Dwayne Haskins coming out of Ohio State. Remember that. I didn't want anything to do with him. There's an Ohio State bias at the quarterback position that does exist, and I do fall victim and prey to that, or at least at that time I did, because I think Justin Fields is better than Dwayne Haskins, and I think CJ Stroud is better than Justin Fields. So they're trending in the right direction at Ohio State. That said, I wasn't a big fan of Dwayne Haskins. There was a small body of work. Remember, Haskins was a 1-year starter, and me and Derek B, specifically Derek B, but I agreed with him when he said Dwayne Haskins' father did him a disservice when he let his son declare for the NFL draft after being a starter for just 1 year. It wasn't enough time. It wasn't enough of a sample size. He wasn't mature enough yet mentally. He wasn't ready for the NFL. He really wasn't. He was big man on campus. He enjoyed Ohio State, but he just thought it was going to be a continuation of that going on to the NFL. He didn't put in the work. He wasn't ready. And I didn't think the sample size was big enough. I didn't like some of what I saw from him at Ohio State in his lone season. He did some really good things, but a lot of what he did was simple. A lot of drag routes, a lot of mesh concepts. And with their talent, just get it in the hands of your playmakers and it can do the rest. I wasn't blown away by him. We got 3 years of film and body of work on Sam Howell at UNC, plus an additional year now of him being in the NFL, getting his feet wet, learning the nuances of the game, seeing what it's like to be a pro. I think that this was a much healthier situation for Sam than it was Dwayne. Dwayne came in to the league at a time where there was turmoil in Washington with Jay Gruden, who we knew was a lame duck coach. Jay didn't want him. Jay was trying to save his job. What can he do with a first-round quarterback? I just talked about the Bears putting Justin Fields in a no-win situation by drafting him into a situation, which, look, as an organization, if you strongly believe in a quarterback, whether you think that coach is going to be here long-term to mentor that quarterback and bring him along is of no consequence. You take the quarterback, whether that coach is going to be here or not, to see it through. But what you're doing, though, is you're putting that quarterback in a tough spot because he's going to be asked to learn an offense that isn't going to be implemented the next year, more likely than not. So you're going to ask him to learn 2 offenses in his first 2 years. He's going to have a brand new staff. And whether that first staff believed in him or not, that second staff may not. In Dwayne's case, the first staff didn't believe in him. And the second staff didn't really believe in him, but they gave him a shot. So at least in this situation, Sam was drafted by the same people that are giving him an opportunity to succeed. These people believe in him. That's why they drafted him. So everything about this situation is way more skewed towards Sam Howell being successful than Dwayne Haskins. And then I think above all else, up here in the cabeza, Sam Howell is locked in. Dwayne Haskins wasn't. So yeah, I believe in Sam way more than I ever did Dwayne. I didn't even want Dwayne. I was more of a Drew Lock fan. You guys remember that? I was way more of a Drew Lock fan. He turned out to be ass-tastic, but I don't know if he was put in a great situation either. One thing they don't do in Denver, and you would think they would be better at it with John Elway as their, team president, GM, kind of overseeing everything, is you think they'd be better at developing quarterbacks out there, but they're not. They're good at getting veteran quarterbacks to come out there and win for them, i.e. Peyton Manning. But between Brock Osweiler and the Peyton Lynch, or Paxton's not Peyton, Paxton Lynch, and Drew Lock, between all of those young quarterbacks, and they also had a 7th rounder out of Northwestern. That guy, he's still in the league too. I think he's with New Orleans. Last time I checked, he was with New Orleans. I don't know where he is now. But it's Trevor Siemian. Between all of those young boys that got a chance in Denver and they all stunk, Drew Lock was in a bad situation. But I don't know. He might have just been asked regardless of wherever he was at. But I've always told you, fit matters. Fit matters. I think Sam Howell is in a situation that fits him, his skill set, and I think he's going to be able to flourish because of it. But we'll see. We will see. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 322nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I appreciate y'all rocking with the kid. Look forward to chopping it up with you. This is going to be a crazy week. I already told you guys, going to have some big shows. Be on the lookout for promotions for that via social media and on YouTube. So stay tuned. We got a lot going on, and we about to dig in, man. It's a lot going on with Washington, but just around the league in general. So we're going to chop it up. We're going to talk about all of it, and I look forward to doing that with all of you. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. And have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.